Good evening and welcome to Athens City Council. It's Monday, December 9th, 2019 at 7 p.m. And tonight it's a little bit different format. We're going to start out off with our Finance and Personnel Committee. So you might notice these are the Finance and Personnel Committee members up here with Councilmember Reisner acting as chair. After that, we will be having a special session, and that's a little bit different than our ordinary business session. So we don't have communications, we don't have reports, we also don't amend the agenda, and we do not have that opportunity at the end of the meeting where citizens have the opportunity to speak for 3 minutes on any other subject that we've not covered during the night. So it's a little bit abbreviated. It is exactly what it says in its title. It's special, primarily for the reading of ordinances. But we'll lead off with the Finance and Personnel Committee with Councilmember Reisner. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. I have a couple of items under Finance and Personnel. The first is Division of Environmental and Financial Assistant, DEFA. Excuse me. May I continue?
Thanks.
Thank you. As I understand, this is a grant or a loan that allows for the regionalization of some of our city utilities, in particular water and sewer. It is a loan at zero interest over 40 years, which would allow for a large sum to be borrowed or actually bonds issued. And then we could expand our utilities outward. If the mayor wants to expound on that a little bit.
I think you pretty much did. I mean, it's regionalization. The purpose of this would be for things such as the 50 sewer corridor, but also on our end as well as county, but also some of our other sewer assets in the city. So it is, again, as you said, this is what's really important, is it's 0% interest over the course of 40 years. So it's a really helpful funding stream that the city has access to.
So from the Madam President?
And so as I understand, this is similar to the wastewater treatment plant financing formula that we did when we did the improvements for that, similar to it, with some of it being zero interest. And what I think that our purpose tonight is discussing it so it gives the city authorization to apply for the application, to turn in an application in February.
It does.
Okay. So, will the City Service Safety Director be handling that side?
I believe so.
Okay. Well then, Member Costas.
Yes, thank you. Is there any deadline on this? Does this have to be done before the end of the year?
I will get back to you on that,
Okay.
Councilmember Katsas. I don't know for sure if there is a deadline. Likely there is. There often is with some of these, but I'll find out for DEFA.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'll find out, and then if we have
It'll be introduced, and yeah, it'll come up for first reading tonight. In second reading, it depends on council's schedule for meetings. But once it starts, we need to keep it rolling.
Okay. Member Crowell, any questions?
Oh.
Member Butler? Okay. This is something I've been kind of dreading, but it's got to be done. The topic of Athens Community Television. I've been involved with some meetings with the director of Athens Community Television and the City Service Safety Director and the mayor, looking at our revenue stream from from our cable franchise fee, which is in steep decline, and I believe some decisions have been made. So, care to share that, Mayor, or do you want me to give the bad news?
Well, we can give it together. How's that?
How's that? Yes. Very good.
And that is effective January 1, there will no longer be the Athens City Television, ACTV. We will continue on, obviously, with the government channel, and what we would like to do would be to migrate that particular franchise drop up to the city building here.
Okay. Do you need any authorization from council, or is this more of a simply not renewing the contract?
I think it's basically not renewing the contract.
Okay.
Again, which we've been talking with the director for ACTV and engaging, to which he recognized that revenues were falling, or the franchise fee was dropping over the course of several years, but also looking at behaviors of those who come in and use that particular asset. And more people are using this to create your own programming.
Yes.
So it's
Another
changed.
victim of technology.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any questions from council? Committee? Member Butler?
Thank you. I just would like to acknowledge on the record the years of service and artistic creativity that's been generated from that office, which has been valuable. And I know a lot of community members along the way have benefited from that, have been entertained by it, have
Right.
been sparked interest through that process. And I would concur that with access to a smartphone and the internet, whether the platforms might be social media, or et cetera, YouTube, there's an opportunity for creativity there that
Right.
might not need the same editing and equipment that they offer, but I do want to acknowledge the years and contributions.
I agree.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, in that
Okay.
case,
That's the end of
nothing
the
else.
report.
No more bullet points. That's it.
Okay. The other council members could join us, then we'll move on to the special session.
Am I missing anyone?
I'm going to ask to table the towing and then the ordinance. Can I do that?
You can see if you get a second. You can try it. Before we begin, our first item of business, what I would like to do, we have an unusual set of circumstances, unforeseen circumstances, where our clerk of council is not able to be with us here tonight. And the documents, the ordinances that are passed tonight need to be signed by the clerk of council, or in this case, tonight it will be an acting clerk of council. So if I could have a motion, I think Councilmember Butler has agreed to serve as acting clerk of council.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, and a motion by Chris Fall, a
Thank you.
second by Councilmember Sarah Grace, to appoint Councilmember Kent Butler as the acting clerk of council. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, and the vote was taken, but Councilmember Katsas was absent, so 6.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And you might notice Councilmember Katsas has excused himself so that there won't be any conflict of interest with the discussion of the Baileys while we have that. So our first item of business, establishing the quorum. All members of council are here. Councilmember Butler will return after this, the reading.
Councilmember Katsas will.
Katsas, yes, excuse me. You're here.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
As we know.
Okay. And so our first ordinance for third reading is 11019. And this is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement to provide financial support from the city's transient guest tax to the Outdoor Recreation Council of Appalachia, known as ORCA, for funding the Bailey's Trail System, along with other educational activities, and is introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President. Before I make any motions, I just want to say that of all the ordinances and resolutions that I have seen in my 7 years, 11 months, and 9 days of being a member of council, I've never had anything quite like this one coming before me, with the amount of public interest and participation and just the general interest in a piece of legislation. I mean, we've had other controversies before, but Nothing quite like this. So I would like to hereby make a motion that we adopt 110-19.
Second. Jinx. Can't talk the rest of the night.
All right, we have a motion and second. What we'll do is we'll entertain comments from council members and administration, and then we'll move to the audience if anybody would like to make comments from the audience about this ordinance. So, council members? Councilmember McGee.
All right. Well, as some of you suspect, I may have been opposed to this initially, and initially my position has been all along, I think it's a great idea. I think it's wonderful. I hope it brings prosperity to Athens and to Chauncey and our communities and our counties, because we certainly need something like this. My concern has been all through this entire process, the question of whether this should be, whether this should proceed through private funding rather than the city of Athens, whether the city of Athens would actually be possibly losing money in this process, and whether we should take the risk to do so. In trying to do my own analysis of things, and I've done a lot of my own attempts at fact-finding, I'm still concerned over the fact that sometimes we mix the terms of users and visitors to try to get numbers, and sometimes we get numbers tossed out at us that are, in my mind, highly speculative. When we talk about 1 million visitors or to that degree, it's certainly something that bothers me, because I think that is wishful thinking. But I am of the opinion that this is still a very good possible or possibility. I think it's worth trying to plant this tree, in other words, planting the seeds for this tree. And even if we take a loss for a little while, I think it'll be worth it in the long run. At least I hope so. So I, too, have been absolutely impressed by the fact that we've had so many people come forth and give their support. And we've had some really good statements and points made by people. And not just the normal trail rider, but some business people who have come forth and said, yes, this is why we are willing to locate in Athens County, because we want some things to happen here. And I really like to hear that kind of input. So, again, I think it's a process that disturbs me, because I know I have the reputation of being a kind of the conservative old cheapskate on council. But I think it's worthwhile, and I support it. Thank you.
Councilmember Fall.
Thank you. I think what Councilmember McGee said has a lot of worth. I, too, have been very cynical of this process. We do other investments in the whole county. We do the tourism, and we do the EDC, the Economic Development Council. So the idea of the city of inputting money into an investment like this is really not that big of a stretch for a lot of people, because they understand, and the economic development of it, if models are correct, can be very large. I have more of an issue with some of the leadership that has gone on in the past with this. I think that we need to identify areas that the city can do better in with providing liaison and being able to follow a long-term project like this. You've been working on long-term projects for 2 years. It comes to council, and all of a sudden we have to become, specialists in models and, pay as you go, or pay for success, or this, land trust versus a recreational trust. So people, I think we need to figure out ways to liaison so that those sort of issues and the information the council needs and the questions that we need to answer are more readily available, because we've been brought along through the process. And I think that has something to do with our liaison. The other thing I think we need to think about going forward to our new session, This isn't the first time that we've brought something to council and council has said, oh, wait a minute, there's not a lot of accountment or transparency or accounting, accountability, those sort of things. When we worked on the right-of-way piece that Andy Stone was working on for a long time, that came to council, and it was like none of the things that council usually requires when we do things like that. And this is a similar situation where the council doesn't sign contracts for 20 years. We do it for the water treatment center, but the water treatment is in the city, so we get the physical manifestations of it. So I think that what has been put forward as amendments help to go and make me more assured of the leadership that's going to go forward with this. The leadership of Debbie Phillips is essential, and that ORCA has the chairperson with Paige Ellis. I think that that's a good team to go forward with this. We need to have everything ready and everything all set up, because if this is supposed to be a model of private funding and public facilities, that it needs to be a model and it needs to have everybody on board. So, thank you.
Other council members. Councilmember Corral.
I'm very excited about this project. I, from the beginning, was a bit concerned, as some of the others have said, about whether we're going to hit our numbers, what is the economic return. But over the last several weeks, we've listened to people come and speak on this project who are a lot more involved in these kinds of developments than I myself have been. And I have been convinced by Professor Julie Paxton and Susan Arano and Debbie Phillips and Don McCarthy, and so many people who have come forward to help me understand this project better. We had a very nice tour last week out at the trails themselves, and hearing the people actually on the trails, developing the trails, talk about the way that they develop them and the users. We've been talking about this as a mountain bike trail for a very long time, but it's quite clear that this will bring in average hikers like myself, birders, trail runners, adaptive bicycle or other vehicles will be able to use these trails. And then some pieces that I didn't follow originally about the different funding sources coming from all over to improve the Chansey Park, and the plans for improving that park space I think are really exciting for the city of Chansey, as well as the mine remediation, the things that needs to be done to the old mine that still has the tipple there and some outbuildings. And then of course bringing in the bikeway to Chansey. All of these things together, I'm excited to be a part of it. So I'm in full support. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Butler.
Thank you. I too would like to express my continued support, and I'm excited about the project, assuming that we vote successfully this evening. I've received feedback from citizens all over and all different backgrounds. I've heard from PhDs and medical doctors. I've been approached by a Presbyterian minister. I've been approached by citizens, runners, bicyclists, hikers. There's an enthusiasm that's contagious with all these people. And for me, in listening to that, as well as the input and feedback we've heard at the podium, it's almost a no-brainer. I just think we would be remiss to not support this and potentially look back and frown upon a negative vote. So I'm excited about moving forward and progressing. I think there's factors that aren't always measurable, and health and wellness can't always be measured to the nth degree. Yes, there's happiness scales and there's all sorts of other factors, but I think when we're looking at where we want our population to be as a community and how we want to be at the forefront of attracting future citizens to our area, this is what excites me about this project. Thank you.
Any other comments from council members? Okay. Administration?
You know, when this came forward with Quantified Ventures and the Wayne National Forest, U.S. Forest Service, I believe it was in Baker Center or somewhere on campus. To me, I was fascinated from the very beginning in looking at what could be a great opportunity, not just for outdoor recreation, but for economic development in the city of Athens, the county of Athens, and beyond. And I want to remind council that Orca is not just about the Bailey Trail System. Orca is all outdoor recreation. You know, one of our cherished assets, I believe, is the Hocking River as it meanders through Athens, and the possibility in time of having that fall under Orca as a water trail, and figure out how we can continue to use that asset as something that's recreational in nature. As we explore ways in which we can finally connect the Athens bike path, the Hocking and Edina Bikeway, all the way to Belpre, at least on the Athens County end of things. I think that there's opportunities there in the future with the Bailey being essentially the crown jewel of things as we start to look at other recreational activities throughout our county to just continue to make ourselves stronger. I see this as a regional asset that's going to really not just benefit the city of Athens, the village of Chansey, the township of York Township, Buchtel, Nelsonville, but I also see this being something that I think is desperately needed in Southeast Ohio right now, to where we're working together as players in the same sandbox, trying to figure out how we continue to make ourselves economically viable in an ever-changing world when it comes to economic development. So I appreciate what I'm hearing from council. I think that this is a solid risk to take in terms of diversifying our local economy.
Okay. And if we have any comments from the audience, what I'd like to do is what I've done the past few times is allow an opportunity for anybody who has not spoken before. So if this would be your first time speaking tonight, if you'd like to come up and offer any comments.
Let's do it.
We do have some first time.
If you want, if anybody wants to, you could feel free to. Although I see a nearly full house once again, as I'll take as a show of support. Okay. Okay. Well, it's nice to have you all here, part of the process, and to have received your emails and your comments and conversations that we've had with people. It's been very helpful. Okay. Well, all right. So we have a motion and second for approval of ordinance 11019.
Have we?
If no additional
Yes, we
comments.
do have, yes, correct. We have a motion from Councilmember Reisner and a second by Councilmember Crowell.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? Unanimous. Motion carries. The ordinance is approved. An historic moment. And Councilmember Katsas knew when to come back in. Okay.
Now everyone has to stay for the rest of the meeting.
Yeah, we could give you 30 seconds if you want to stay. It would be wonderful, but we
Well,
also
we're
understand.
gonna talk about sewage.
This has been a long process. We'll give you 30 seconds to go. Sure.
So interesting.
Weird. I think it's being very weird.
Okay.
But
Hey, Peter, the Bailey's thing failed.
I was wondering what I missed.
now,
I think we still have a hot mic.
Okay.
probably did.
We'll give it just about 10 more seconds here.
Oh, no, we're so lonely.
Okay.
Now we can have our big party.
All right. We'll move on to Ordinance 12619, which is an ordinance amending Athens City Code, Title 7, Chapter 7.05, Parking Regulations, to add Section 7.05.03.1, a residential parking permit, introduced by Councilmember Katsas.
President Nicely, thank you. And this, I'd like to make a motion to adopt 012619.
Second?
And this is to take a 2-year pilot, 72-hour pilot program that has been working on some of our city streets here in Athens and turn it into code.
Okay. We have a motion and second for approving Ordinance 12619. Do we have any comments or questions? Councilmember Fall.
I'd like, if it's been successful in this situation, I'd like to see it, whether other areas in the city can come under this, if it's now in the code, whether there are other places that can benefit from this sort of reduction in parking regulations.
Right.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from council members? Yes, Councilmember Crowell.
Just to echo that, I'd like to encourage any citizens who find a additional street to be added to this ordinance to come forward in the future and have this ordinance be amended if needed. Thank you.
All right. Any comments or questions from administration or the audience? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. Ordinance 12719 is an ordinance repealing Athens City Code, Title 7, Traffic Code, Chapter 7.06, tow truck regulations, and amending to remove Chapter 7.05, parking regulations, Section 7.05.32 through 7.05.35, and 7.09.99, T1 and 2, penalties, introduced by Councilmember Katsas.
President Nicely, thank you.
Oh, wait, before, I think
Thank you.
Councilmember Fall had approached me and
Yes.
before the motion to approve.
I would like to table this for right now. I've had people from the student realm that first brought this issue forward, and I haven't gotten enough information back from them on their sayings about what this is, and so I think that it's fair just maybe to table it to slow it down a bit.
There is a motion to table.
Second.
Okay, there's a
Councilmember
second.
Grace.
And on motions to table, our rules of council say that there is debate allowed. So are there any other comments on the tabling? Councilmember McGee.
I would just like to say that I would support the tabling at this point in time. There are two issues here, and one is certainly the impact and concern that Student Senate and the students of Ohio University have expressed already concerning the rates. But the second issue, I think, is probably a more serious issue, and that's the preemption issue that at this point in time we're seeing nothing but the powers of local government being removed, sliced off like onion peels. And at this point in time, I would suggest that conceding any kind of issue for preemption would be the wrong move. So again, I would suggest that tabling would be appropriate.
Councilmember Reisner.
I really don't agree. We've argued about this backwards and forwards and right, left, and center. We've heard different people talk about it, and it all keeps coming back down to the same thing. So if we delay it until next year, I don't see what new information could possibly change anything. The idea of preemption will still be there. The idea that the state of Ohio and the PUCO regulates towing, not the city, will still be there. That's not going to change. There's not going to be any major court decisions from this Supreme Court anytime soon. So the city still stays in violation of the law as it's written. So if we could pass this, and if by some miracle the courts were to decide, hey, guess what? You can regulate it all you want. We can always go back and change it. I just don't see the need to table. But that's just me.
Councilmember Katsas.
Nancy Bain would say.
Thank you, President Nicely, and of course I'm in agreement with Member Reisner. And this is mostly because this code hasn't been touched since 2003. We've known about this for over 10 months. And also at this point, we have a recommendation from our law director and from Chief Pyle, who said that this isn't something that he really wants to get into with regulation. This has to deal between the private property owner and the towing companies. So I don't even really see a need for the city to be involved in this section. Currently, right now, the way our code stands, we have less requirements on our signage than what the PUCO requires for the towing companies to help safeguard people that do have their vehicles towed. I also don't like the idea that these small business owners are being painted in a bad light. I can definitely agree that this is a service that nobody likes to have done to them. But if it didn't exist, I would hate to see the city having to own and maintain their own towing vehicles and employ somebody to do this job that is done efficiently and cost effectively by small business owners in our city.
Councilmember Grace.
Thank you, President Isley. And I seconded the motion for tabling because honestly, I wanted there to be a bit more discussion about where everyone stood, what people were thinking about this particular ordinance. And as someone who has had reserved parking spaces that then have been necessary for work, and then had someone park in that space and have needed the services of a tow company in order to access the parking space that I had paid for, I definitely value the efforts provided by those businesses, and so I feel like when we have a city code that can't be enforced as it currently stands because it is in violation of the Ohio statute, then that, you know, I think it may be an issue that we could try to have some creative meetings, gatherings, approaches on as far as ways to better communicate the parking regulations or communicate the challenges. But anyway, I understand that it's that it's a complex issue that people who are directly impacted by it are on both sides can feel very strongly about, and so.
Councilmember McGee.
I just wanted to clarify something because I think there's a little misunderstanding here, and especially with Councilman Reisner's comment. You're not going to get a court decision if you take this away because the whole thing is moot then. Okay, so nobody can decide it. If we leave it,
You mean the city of Athens can't get a court decision?
nobody can get a court decision on that issue. So if that gentleman's car is towed in the future and he wants to say, well, the city of Athens has this lesser rate, it doesn't matter that we had a lesser rate at one point in time. We no longer have it, so that we're giving up any possibility that this could be challenged. Okay? That's called moot. And the courts use it to knock stuff out. So if the city of Athens, regardless of what we do, whether we raise the rates, whether we keep them the same or whatever, so long as we have something, it gives a student or a person the right to challenge it in court. Once it's removed, then you no longer have that right to challenge that issue in court. Mm-hmm. So you have to understand that preemption means that, basically, that you're giving up that right. So please don't be fooled by anybody thinking that it'll go to court and somebody will have a chance to say, you know, the city had a lesser rate, because we won't. We won't have anything, and they won't have a cause of action. So please be aware of that.
Any other comments? Yes, Councilmember Katsas.
There have been.
Yeah, and Council Law Director Eliason.
Yes,
Yes, please.
Okay, so there have been 2 court cases, and one was a student versus the tow company, the first one. That one was settled, so we don't know how that one turned out at all. And there was a second case, a recent case, where, I don't know, I said student, a citizen, sued the tow company, and the tow company did not appear. The judge ordered, in addition to, the suit was for the towing fee, but also for damage that the tow company caused to the vehicle. And the court awarded the person who sued damages for the tow from the tow company, but did not award a lesser amount of the tow charge. That was part of the suit. So Mr. McGee is right. I mean, there have been court cases, and in that case, the judge ordered the amount for the damage to the vehicle, but did not order the tow fee returned.
So the tow fee stood?
It hasn't been decided by the court on that issue, and I think Lisa would agree with that.
Well, on that
Sound like it was
particular
decided to me.
case, I actually had a conversation with the judge who issued this ruling, and he said that in this case, the tow fee was not argued. The defendant who had been towed, nor any attorneys involved in the case, did not argue the fee. They argued whether or not it was a legitimate tow. And so while he did not alter the fee, he was not asked to. He was just asked to rule on whether or not the tow was a legitimate tow. And so I would say that, it seems that it hasn't been decided.
I would agree that it hasn't been decided to that point, but only that there have been two cases. And again, in the case we were just discussing, the amount was still the amount that was owed. Right? So the tow company did not appear and did not in any way challenge anything. The judgment was issued against them.
Maybe they forgot.
Councilmember Consus, did you have another comment?
Yes, yeah, and this is just for additional clarification. This is only in regards to if you were parking on private property where the private property is signed by a towing company, that is where this rate would apply. So if you were to have your vehicle towed from a public right-of-way, it would automatically be, the charge is $129. So, 10 months ago when I brought this forward, I did ask to raise the rate to match what the PUCO had listed, and this is where we're at based on the based on what the law director and Police Chief Pyle have brought forward. Additionally, the amounts that have been suggested, I think that they've been brought forth with a very simple calculation that can't really be applied to the industry and what the fees have done since 2003 to 2019.
Councilmember Butler.
Thank you, President Isley. Regarding the motion to table, I just wanted to acknowledge that I appreciate Councilmember Fall bringing this to our attention. A number of us attended student government, student council meeting in which this particular topic was a major concern. This was a few months ago, I believe, when we were in attendance at that. And having said that, we do have roughly 20,000 students in our community, many of which have either are wrapping up the semester or taking break for the semester. I can't remember exactly where they're at with the timeline, but I appreciate the acknowledgement that maybe they're not able to be here this evening, or that there's concerns that still may be within that population. So thank you.
Okay. So we have the motion and second for tabling. Any other comments from council members? Okay. All those in, so we'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying, I think I'm going to ask for a show of hands. If you're in favor of tabling, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And opposed? Okay, so 5-2. Okay, so it has been tabled. That means unless there is a miraculous decision by next week's session, it will probably be that this ordinance is gone
It's dead.
for this year, and it will have to be then reintroduced next year with some kind of, after further discussion.
I hope that the students will be able to come in, because this all originated with the students complaining about how expensive it was. And we need to bring in their voices through the process more. Thank you.
Okay, and we have had the students in the voices, and we appreciate your opinion, and I would just say, you know, we've had an opinion offered by the law director, and so I would just encourage this to move forward, the discussion to move forward in a timely fashion, so it doesn't languish. Thank you. Ordinance 12819 is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to participate in the Uptown Special Improvement District, and this is introduced by Councilmember Reisner.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion that we adopt 12819.
Second.
We discussed this in committee. It's been read twice. The mayor has spoken to for the reasons for wanting to establish a special improvements district. Would like to add any more comments to the? No?
Please.
Auditor, would you have anything to say, since this is a kind of a little taxi thing?
I guess I would say I'm in support of this ordinance. I think that this is a way for us, yes, we will be collecting some additional payments from people, but that money is designated to make improvements for our business people, and yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Sounds good to me.
Thank you. We have a motion and second for approval of 12819 for the special improvement districts. Do we have any additional comments or questions from council members? Administration?
You know, it's just been almost 4 years coming.
Okay. All right, and any comments from the audience? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion carries and the ordinance is approved. And
That one needs a round of applause, too. There aren't as many people as the Baileys, but
that's exciting.
El Cid.
We now have several ordinances for second reading, and to the best of my knowledge, I'm not aware of any of these that need to be suspended. So I'll be reading the title, pausing briefly to see if there are any additional comments or questions, and then moving on to reading the titles of the next one. Ordinance 13019 is an ordinance to make appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Athens, Ohio during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2020, and is introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee. Ordinance 13119 is an ordinance authorizing 2020 staffing levels and non-union compensation, repealing all ordinances inconsistent therewith, and declaring an emergency, introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee. No comments, we'll move on. 13219 is an ordinance adopting a fringe benefits package for non-union personnel within the City of Athens and repealing all ordinances inconsistent therewith and declaring an emergency.
Madam President, I would like to offer an amendment to the attachment to this ordinance, and I have the benefits package printed out with the amendment in it.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Request.
So motion to amend by Councilmember Grace and a motion to second by Councilmember Fall. Thank you.
Behind you.
Nice color coding.
25 words or less, can you
So
get to the gist?
this amendment does three things generally. The most significant and my motivation and for offering this amendment is to provide paid parental leave to all full-time non-union employees of the city who have worked for the city for a period of at least 12 months. So this is
For how long?
12 months.
No,
If-
the leave.
The leave is 240 hours, or six weeks
I don't have one.
of paid parental leave. And I can read the section, and it is, parental leave of up to a maximum of 240 hours will be granted to parents who are eligible full-time employees for a single event, birth or adoption, single or multiple children, excluding adoption of a spouse's children. Any employee granted leave under this section shall continue to be covered under the city's group health, life, and AD&D insurance. The parent shall be entitled to receive his or her full salary for up to a maximum of 240 hours of parental leave. To receive the full leave, all 240 hours must be used within 10 weeks of the qualifying birth or adoption, and at least 160 hours must be taken consecutively. The remaining 80 hours may be taken on a part-time schedule with the approval of the employee's immediate supervisor. Employees who are on parental leave are not required to use any accrued sick leave, vacation time, or compensatory time prior to taking parental leave. FMLA leave will be taken concurrent with parental leave. Any paid holidays that occur during parental leave will not count against the allowed parental leave time. And for the purposes of this section, parent shall mean an employee who resides in the same household as the child and is a biological parent of the child, a domestic partner of the biological parent, an adoptive parent, or a domestic partner of an adoptive parent. To be eligible for parental leave under this section, employees must be eligible for FMLA. So if there are any questions, or I would be happy to try to address those. The other changes that I made were quite minor. There are some cleanup of the military leave section, which I did discuss with our service safety director. And it's just to clarify the intent of that section. And then I found as I was reading through this that all the descriptions of reasons for leave and the terms and conditions around each type of leave were sort of scattered out throughout the document. So I renumbered or like rearranged so that all types of leave are in, and so paragraphs have been renumbered. And then have made adjustments to where other paragraphs are referenced and to hopefully make sure all the language is consistent.
So we have a motion and second for these amendments, most significant of which is the parental leave, and thank you for reading that through for us. Any comments or questions from council members? Yes, Councilmember Fall.
I commend Councilwoman Grace because this is something that we've needed to do for quite a while. I think it's especially relevant because as a city, we've tried to be very cognizant the fact that in many places, the people who do not have a union tend to get overlooked in a lot of places where in a lot of situations, they've been traditionally the traditional female role of administrative secretaries and those sort of things. And they are just as important. They make everything run smoothly, just like everybody else in the city. And all our workers deserve what they need to make home life be able so that they can come to work and give their all. And I think this is really important. Thank you.
Any other, yes, Councilmember Crowell.
Likewise, thank you, Councilmember Grace, for working on this. I'm just curious, is there a definition of domestic partner that we? Is
I
that defined?
chose that language because that is the same language that is in our section about health insurance, that it would be provided to the domestic partners of employees. And do we have that? I believe
That was put in a long
there
time
likely is, but I specifically chose
Correct,
that
there is a
because-
process for that on the forms, and proof that they actually live in the same household and it's not just a, girlfriend, boyfriend thing. So we do have a process for that, and there is a definition, as she said, within our medical provision to
Personnel.
provide medical coverage.
Okay.
Councilmember Butler and then Councilmember McGee.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify for the record, thank you again, Councilmember Grace, and thank you, Auditor, for also offering that. Am I correct in understanding this is very similar to what Ohio University also has established with its employees for leave? Similar?
The university does offer 6 weeks paid parental leave for birth or adoption events, yes.
Thank you. And then I slightly jest when I say this, but maybe we should make this retroactive for all the good parents that we have working for the city, so, thank you.
Councilmember
I
McGee.
jest.
I too would like to thank Councilwoman Grace. I think this is a wonderful idea, and its time has come. I do have a question, though, in regards to non-union employees. I mean, it was mentioned that some of the secretaries may be classified as non-union employees. I just wondered if you could tell us, what does that term non-union employees really cover in the city employment? It would seem to me that it would be management primarily. I'm not sure who the other people in the categories would be.
Well, as I think you're aware, Councilmember McGee, that we have 4 collective bargaining units.
Right.
And then a lot of our other faculty, my brain's on a comment, kind of here. Our employees fall under the non-union category, so it includes all of them.
Yeah. So, employees that work here.
Well, I understand that, but is there in general, like, I know it was mentioned secretaries, but I mean, I know management would be non-union employees. Do we have many of the other categories that would be secretaries or?
Yes. All 6 people in my office, all 6 in Lisa's office are non-union.
Okay.
There's 15 people probably in court.
Do we have a number in general of city
Yeah.
employees?
It's roughly, it's roughly a third, maybe less than a third of our workforce here in the city of Athens are non-union.
Really? Okay.
Well, the police and fire chief, the fire
Yeah.
captains, the administrative assistants at the fire department, EPW, a lot of their administrative personnel, engineers, assistants, all
Scott.
non-union employees.
Like
Yeah.
Scott is, and IT,
Yeah, yeah,
Debbie Walker.
Debbie.
government
So
channel.
50 to 60 personnel.
City council.
Okay, that's what I was really just wondering, how many
I get
people
checked
this entail and what kind of categories they were in. Thank you for that.
They remind me that I'm part-time.
Any other comments or questions? And Lisa, Law Director Eliason, did you have a comment?
We do have a definition in 3.1102, domestic partnership. So there is a definition and explanation, much as
That was
Auditor
passed
Heck stated.
before the Supreme Court case, when we wanted to make sure that people had the right.
Okay. Mayor Patterson.
I certainly appreciate this amendment. Now my faculty comment. When I was faculty at Ohio University, it was back in 2006, I believe it was, or 2007. I remember trying to grapple with this particular issue when it came to faculty, staff, and administration for Ohio University, and I really appreciate you amending, or hopefully council will vote on this, but to amend to bring this in. I think this is highly appropriate.
Any other other comments or questions? Yes, Auditor Hecht.
I have talked to Member Grace about this. She did contact me about doing this, and I did some research on my own. I put the questions on my listserv and did some research, and she's correct. I have the university's eligibility. We had discussion about whether they should be made to use their time or not. The university doesn't. I will say that at least 3/4 of the other government entities that I heard back from do not provide any paid family leave. That's not saying that we can't or shouldn't do it. My only real question remaining in this, I did make a suggestion, but that's probably not going to happen either. But some of them that do, like Franklin County, only pays for 2 weeks of parental leave at full salary. Some of them pay for 6 weeks at a reduced rate, 60 or 70%. I think I think Member Grace feels pretty strongly about paying that. So my one little sticking point here is, why would the holidays be excluded from the paid leave? Because if they're on paid leave for 6 weeks and there is a holiday, they're going to get paid for it. So I feel like 6 weeks is 6 weeks. So they could possibly get 6 weeks plus holiday time that not everyone would get, depending on the timing of their child.
But should they have to use parental leave on the 4th of July? Because it falls after they've had their baby. I opted to include that because I wanted
I don't think there's
to
any
be as
exception for
clear.
that in family medical leave. That's the whole thing. This is all under the Family Medical Leave Act umbrella. There's no exception. 12 weeks is 12 weeks. 6 weeks is 6 weeks.
It doesn't have to count as one of their paid days in the 6 weeks for the family.
It doesn't,
family
but I
leave.
think
So-
then that's kind of like, gee, I should have timed this better. I could have gotten New Year's and Christmas holidays paid and had a couple extra days.
Should have thought about that 9 months ago.
So,
I know.
Come on.
Honey, come on. No, let's wait till
I
tomorrow.
also feel like
Catch
that could be an issue for tracking. If they don't take it concurrently 6 weeks straight, which you have said they don't have to, I think the tracking is an issue. We're not talking about a lot of days here. I think we're being very generous by paying all 6 days at 100% of their pay. I'd like to see that taken out. Other than that, I'm okay with it.
As Auditor Heck said, this is an issue that I feel very strongly about. I absolutely believe that paid parental leave is the right thing to do, and I think it is the right way to support our employees. It is the right way to attract and retain employees, and it's absolutely in the best interest from a public health perspective. Our country and our state do a very poor job of adequately supporting especially women and infant, and we have some pretty appalling statistics, and I believe that this is an area in which Athens should be leading, and I appreciate the support of my colleagues.
So we have a motion and second for amending this to include, and at this point, what you're suggesting is including the paid holiday, or saying that they wouldn't count against the rental leave.
That particular issue isn't a deal breaker for me, but I read many different city and business and state policies, and I was impressed by the ones that were as detailed as possible, so that you don't have an issue where an employee comes up and says, well, hey, I don't want to use my time off on this holiday, but the policy is unclear. And so I tried to address the questions that might come up, and so I wrote it that way. And it's not a major, there aren't all that many paid holidays. But I think, well, kudos if someone manages to time it that way. But I know, teachers think very specifically, if they're able to, about planning their leave and around schedules and
Okay.
But anyway, that's.
All right, so we have a motion and second for amending the ordinance. And if no other questions, we'll call for a vote on this. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ordinance has been amended and read for the first time.
Thank you.
Ordinance 13319 is an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into contract with the Employee Benefits Service Center to serve as the city's third-party health insurance administrator, known as a TPA, and declaring an emergency, and is introduced by Councilmember Reisner. Ordinance 13419 is an ordinance authorizing a stop-loss medical insurance contract and declaring an emergency, and is introduced by Councilmember Reisner. Ordinance 13519 is an ordinance amending Ordinance 12717, reallocating revenues from the city income tax and declaring an emergency, introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee. Ordinance 13719 is an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 49, Management, Administration, and Control of the Use of Public Rights-of-Way, Chapter 49.03, Application Procedures, Section 49.03.02B, Certificate of Registration Application, introduced by Councilmember Fall. Ordinance 13819 is an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title I, General Provisions to include fees for use of the city's public rights-of-way, introduced by Councilmember Fall. Ordinance 13919 is an ordinance authorizing construction and construction engineering services for the Kimes Reservoir Project, which is number 324, introduced by Councilmember Butler. Ordinance 14019 is an ordinance amending Athens City Code Titles 9 and 13 relating to firearms and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember Grace. Ordinance 14119 is an ordinance authorizing disposal of an Athens transit bus no longer needed for a municipal purpose, introduced by Councilmember Butler. Ordinance 14219 is an ordinance declaring certain police department firearms no longer needed for a municipal purpose, introduced by Councilmember Butler. Ordinance 14319 is an ordinance to increase sewer rates, amending Athens City Code Title I, General Provisions, Chapter 1.03, Code Fees Established, Sections 5.04.08, Sewer Rates, and declaring an emergency. And Councilmember Reisner, did you have some additional information?
Yes, I had some information I wanted to share with council. I had our city engineer, Bob Headley, to run some figures for me. Last week, we had the ordinance with the attachment that showed the fee schedule, and that fee schedule showed across the board 8% rate increase for all customers, regardless of usage. I asked him to run a spreadsheet using the figure of the majority of users who use less than 15,000 gallons of water per month, and that number of users is 4,839 as of 2019. Using a 3% increase rate, which would mean that their monthly base rate would increase by 74 cents, and monthly base rate would be $25.55 per month. If you look at the chart, you'll see that those who use greater than 15,000 gallons amounts to, let's see, 190, 250, around 300 other users would then have to pay the difference in order for the engineering department to reach that goal of about $145,000 of additional income so they can do their deferred maintenance and get other equipment. And you can see those rates would jump up rather significantly for those customers. I'm not offering an amendment here. I'm just putting this out as additional information. You can compare it to what we've already received, to this new information. We have one more session coming up. If council or any member of council feels that an amendment is necessary, we can discuss it then. Another option could be we could table until next year to discuss it more, or we could pass the the ordinance as it's written now. But I just want everyone to have an alternative view. Member Grace?
Thank you, Member Reisner, for this information. I wondered, is it possible to subdivide that less than 15,000 gallons usage as far as the equipment, software, information that we have? Could that be divided into smaller categories of people?
You would have to set up new billing procedures for that.
Right.
And off the top of my head, I don't know how difficult that would be to break that down into further categories. It would certainly require some sort of software update on somebody's system somewhere. It's one thing just to change these rates here and plug them in the software that we already have, and things will start being done automatically, but I haven't explored that part, so.
Councilmember Fall.
Something we talked about in committee was also the option of bringing this online over a couple of months, so that people, January, don't all of a sudden have a big surprise too. And so I don't know how that would go with the numbers or not, but I think that, personally, I think we've been trying to go towards a dual pay system where you have people who are good conservers and of resources tend to pay less, and that larger ones have to pay more because of, the larger impact that potentially can happen.
Well, as you can see in this new schedule that I passed out, that definitely does happen.
We can also balance it out. Doesn't mean that 3% versus, the other percentage. The idea is there now to look at
Perhaps
this.
a 5.
Yeah.
5% for the lower, rather somewhere in between 3 and 8.
Councilmember McGee.
Sorry.
Just a question, on the larger users, are those the commercial and industrial users?
They are.
Okay.
In the apartments? Or-
I believe they're in that category as well, the larger apartment units. If I may,
Yes, Mayor Thompson.
to get back to Councilmember Grace's point, one of the conversations that Director Stone and I did have was to talk through ultra-low users and what that could possibly look at. The average consumption in that less than 15,000 is around 5,000, 4.5 to 5.5, 6, somewhere in that range. We did today briefly chat about the possibility of having a new category, but as was mentioned, there will be challenges with trying to figure that out under billing, but to create an ultra-low user category and have a lesser percentage. But again, we'd have to do our homework between now and next Monday to figure that out if we were to go down that road at this point in time. I would really request council not table this because we do need to move forward in one fashion or another. Because there's definitely a need with our rates.
So is there a possibility then to work within the next week to look at that ultra-low
We will.
user category and maybe you're thinking less than 5,000?
We will.
Okay.
In increments of 1,000.
It could
I
possibly,
don't know. We'll have to-
it could possibly be a less than 2,000
Okay.
user. So, and again, what that percentage would be, whatever it is, anytime you see an increase, they're both gonna have to increase, so council just needs to know that as well. But again, it was just a conversation we had today, so it's certainly, we're not sitting on our hands in the city building.
Right.
So we're trying to figure this out as well.
Right.
But
Well, we appreciate
there's
your
challenges.
working on that on such short notice, but that would be, nice to be able to.
And it's
Take a look
a
at
great
that.
opportunity right now because we have been talking about this for a long time. Thank you.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Okay. So that was firearms. Okay, we have an ordinance for first reading. And this is an ordinance authorizing the service safety directors to submit an application and enter into a water pollution control loan fund agreement for planning, design, and/or construction, designating a dedicated repayment source for the loan and declaring an emergency. And is this the same one as the DEFA?
This is DEFA.
This is DEFA.
Okay, the only thing that puzzles me is that in this title of this ordinance, it's called a Water Pollution Loan Control Fund. So we may need to do some typographical or just some minor clerical. Because the loan,
Shall I read the ordinance as it's currently written?
do you have the title of it under the,
It's the same title. It says, whereas the city of Athens intends to apply for the water pollution control loan funds to complete critical improvements to city infrastructure that would allow for future growth.
okay. So that's the only thing that I would ask that we clarify between now and next week is whether we have the correct.
I believe we
Title.
do.
Okay.
These are just sub-programs underneath DEFA.
Okay.
The Division
Thank you.
of
That clarifies it then.
Environmental and Financial, whatever.
Administration.
Yeah, you're done,
Too
great.
many acronyms.
Yeah, okay.
I agree, that's why I was asking. Thank you. All right, so that's been read for the first time. We now will be moving into executive session, and a very brief explanation. We'll be having that motion, the roll call vote. I think everybody here has been through this process before, but let me describe it briefly. We'll do that and have that motion and the second and vote for executive session. We will, before we go into executive session, knowing that there are some members of the press here and the city citizens who might have questions. It's 8:14 now, we passed 8:15. We'll allow 5 minutes for people to ask questions, so we will actually then close the doors at 8:20. After we're finished with executive session, we take a motion to come out of executive session. We do open the doors again if you want to remain and ask questions after that, and then we will make a motion to adjourn. So could I have a motion to go into executive session?
I move that we go into executive session due to two matters, one a promotion and one compensation for public office. So,
Officials. And to include,
to include all council members, the president of council, the law director, the auditor, and the mayor.
okay.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question of the 2 promotions and compensation for both?
I'm
Was it
not
the
sure. It
purpose?
says two, in parentheses, in front of matters of promotion and compensation for public officials.
Okay.
Okay. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. And Councilmember Butler?
Aye.
Reisner?
Aye.
Crowell?
Aye.
Fall?
Aye.
Katsas?
Aye.
McGee? Grace?
Aye.
Okay. So we will be closing the doors at 8:20. So welcome to come on up and discuss anything you need to.